talk about a lot of weighty things on this program, like how dreams can change your life, or the effects our thoughts have on our behavior. For the most part, these are things our ancestors knew about, and there's a lot of anecdotal proof that they work. In law, it would be called circumstantial evidence. For many people, this is not enough. They want scientific validation, tests, data, long term studies, and such, for verification of what most of us believe in our hearts is a valid way to journey through life. And that's okay. The more that science proves that these things are real, the more people will be willing to try these methods out and see how they can help them live healthier and more productive lives. One of the concepts that many people find hard to wrap their heads around is energy healing, the idea that unseen forces can treat or even cure ailments. My guest, Betsy Chasse, is seen by some as the godmother of the mind body movement. But in truth, Betsy is one of the biggest skeptics I know. As one of the creators of the groundbreaking movie What the Bleep Do We Know, and in the scores of other books and documentaries she's created since then, Betsy's helped turn on people to the belief that thoughts create reality. But she really wants proof before she puts her seal of approval on anything, especially things that deal with unseen forces. And so she set out to take a look at the science behind energy healing in her new series, Energy, the Ultimate Healer. And she's here to tell us what she's discovered. Welcome back to the Dream Power Show, Betsy.
Wow, thank you, Debbie. That was a great introduction. I really appreciated that. I'm a godmother of a certain things, I'm sure.
Well, you are a bit of a skeptic too, aren't you?
I am a bit of a skeptic. I think healthy skepticism is really important, It's how we learn about things. If you just take everything at face value, then why would you dig deeper or why would you explore? And in that exploration is where you get to learn the juicy nuggets of so many different things, the meat of it. And I think it's really important, especially today, when so many people really don't understand a lot about what we're talking about and tend to not be very discerning and to repeat things. I'm very curious and always want to understand, how does this work?
Which totally makes sense. And so, speaking of energy healing, before we get started talking about the specifics of it, I want your take on what is your definition of energy healing?
Well, energy healing is, it's an interesting thing because I've interviewed a lot of energy healers, and I'm putting quotes around that word because, when we think of a healer, we think of somebody who heals us. And one of the most important elements of energy healing is that the energy healer is not actually the one doing the healing. Your body has a frequency that is its optimum for its perfect health and well-being. And when it gets out of that frequency, you get a dis-ease, out of whack, out of balance, your body gets sick. And what an energy healer will help you do is get your body back into the right frequency. So the body does what it's naturally designed to do. So energy is everything. We're all made up of energy. Energy is all around us. Everything has energy and everything has a frequency. So when I think of what is energy, I think of it as everything that's operating in our field and in the world and how we are aligning or in harmony with it.
Hmm. Well, I love wordplay. And I think it was someone in your series who actually pointed out that the word energy breaks down to energy, chi,
Yes,
life force.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah, it's true because everything you think of it, and the fun part about what I'm doing, it's so interesting is there's so many studies now that show that when your body gets sick, it's out of frequency. And so the body is this amazing. One of my biggest frustrations with the new age movement is they love to refer to the body as a meat packet. And I'm like, oh my God, the body is the coolest thing. Like this thing, this avatar that we get to operate in, like heals itself. It heals itself. It's crazy, right? Like cells speak at this spooky action at a distance with, non-linear communication. There's this amazing thing happening. And when we work with it. When we work to get into the right attunement, the right frequency, our body is miraculous. It does the most amazing thing.
I know. And before you started working on the documentary, did you have any experience with energy healing?
I mean, I did for sure. I'm around enough people so that do a
Oh,
lot of this kind of stuff. And I could say that for sure I already understood that for myself, like when I'm feeling anxious or when I'm feeling stressed or when I'm worried, that deep breathing and that meditation and calming myself, that helps the sympathetic nervous system, for instance, deep breathing, right? Meditation, I already understood, does amazing things for your cognitive abilities, memory, weight gain, like all sorts of stuff. So I already kind of understood that part of it. What I really wanted to understand was how does it work? And the short answer to that is nobody really actually knows how it works. Science hasn't figured out the quote how. What science can show now is in many different studies is that it does work. It does work. Now, to the scale that it works and to the consistency that it works is variable. I mean, we had people in our series who regrew their entire liver, right? And then we had people who, healed their shoulder. And then, so it can go the gamut. And it's important for me, one of the women that healed her liver made with such a powerful point. She said she doesn't want people who are sick, even seriously sick with cancer or something, to go like, well, why am I, she did it. What's wrong with me? It's if we could nail this particular mechanism of what exactly it is that causes the healing, right, medicine would dramatically change forever, right? So that's the big question. But the hard part and the frustrating part is that mainstream science doesn't really study it. Most people that are studying anything around this kind of have to do it in the shadows, kind of have to risk their careers to do this stuff. So, my hope with a series like this is more people go, wow, this is really something we should be looking at. And so that we can figure that piece out because it is an amazing tool.
I know. And speaking of amazing tools, there's one point in your series when you talk about the MRI, which is a miraculous machine, a miraculous, modern medicine's, great diagnostic tool. And that what the MRI technicians do is that they delete everything that doesn't include the actual human body and they
Yeah.
just won't show anything that's outside. And they're missing all
Well,
the
they're missing all the good stuff, right? So one of the battles of science, and it's interesting. So you and I hear the word aura all the time, right? And one of the things that's so funny, science doesn't like to call it an aura. They want to call it a biofield. So if you ever hear anybody refer to the biofield, it's the same thing. Now, science says, okay, we have this electromagnetic field around us. Heart math, who is Heart Math isn't in my current, isn't in the energy healing series. It's in another series, but we've measured this frequency. So there's no dispute that this thing exists, but mainstream science doesn't know what to do with it. They're like, we don't know what to do with this thing. It's not physical. It's non-physical. It's not materialists want to touch it, taste it, smell it, measure it. Right. In the series, besides that piece that Dawson talks about, which is that, the MRIs and other images capture the aura or the biofield, Dr. Ann Baldwin, who is at the University of Arizona, has a device called the BioWell, which this was probably the moment for me that really, it was it. It was like there was no turning back at this point. And it's funny because I had gone to the doctor and the doctor had said, oh, you're having a thyroid issue. I think we're going to put you on this medication. You have to take it for the rest of your life. And I guess I think it kills your real thyroid and replaces it. And I was kind of like, ooh, I'm not sure I'm prepared to do that. Give me some time to see if I can figure this out. I went to my Chinese medicine doctor who gave me some herbs. Herbs are a form of energy healing because it's the energy, the frequency of the herb that's healing you. Homeopathics, energy healing. So there's different types of energy healing, not just the like, oh, kind of energy healing, because everything is energy, right? So started taking some herbs and I had to go to Arizona to interview the amazing Dr. Ann Baldwin. So she puts my fingers. So one of the things that your body does is that electrons and protons are literally coming off your body. That's making your aura, right? And she put my fingers, each finger is attached to a meridian in your body. Did you know, as a side note, because you know I'm the queen of ADHD, but here's a funny thing. Chinese medicine has been around for 3,000 years, yet mainstream science says there's no scientific proof it actually works. Okay. Anyway, back to my story. So she measures my fingers in this little machine. She pops up into a computer scan and into a computer program, my aura or biofield. She calls it biofield. What she says is your biofield needs to be solid all around you. If there are breaks in your biofield, typically that's an indicator that something is off energetically or physically in that area of your body. Um, Here's a funny thing. Dogs and cats and animals have been shown, and they've done the scientific test, to come and poke at a part of your body where they've later found a disease. So the
Well,
same energetic.
I've heard of dogs that can sniff for cancer.
Yeah, exactly. It's because in your energetic meridian in your biofield, it's broken. There's a crack, so to speak. So she does this. She shows my biofield and she goes, "Oh, look, you have a little teeny tiny crack in your thyroid." Now, I had never said a word about my thyroid, mind you. Dr. Ann Baldwin was the one and only doctor, by the way, to ever do a government funded study on Reiki. And what she found, they didn't even want to publish because it was so groundbreaking and so radical. And the great thing about Dr. Ann Baldwin was she'd never been into energy healing before in her life. She's just a scientist. So she does 10 minutes of Reiki just around my thyroid. We remeasure it again. Sure enough, there's no break in my aura anymore. I go back to the doctor when I get home. I don't tell him any of this. I said, let's redo the test. He redoes the test and he said, oh, we must have had a false positive before because there's nothing wrong with your thyroid.
Mhm.
That was the end for me.
Yes. And don't you think it's possible that one of the reasons why Western medicine kind of dismisses all of this is because Western medicine is so good at dealing with the symptoms,
Yeah.
hence big pharma and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And energy healing and other kinds of Chinese medicine deal with the underlying causes.
Right. Well, and I don't want to bash Western medicine entirely because the good news is that in thousands, and I think 1,000 hospitals in the US. I think that I'm not sure if it's US or worldwide, so forgive me if I'm not remembering the statistic right now. Reiki is now available in hospitals. They've done studies that show that people that undergo Reiki prior to getting anesthesia need less anesthesia, have a better re-entry, as it were, out of anesthesia, and have a shorter recovery time. That's a scientific study from somebody doing Reiki. So it's like this slow climb, right, towards getting these kinds of things. You know, for another series that I'm currently shooting, I interviewed the amazing Dr. Bernie Siegel, who for many years was referred to as the crazy, controversial doctor of love, because he would tell his cancer patients to meditate, to paint, to draw, to quit their jobs, even, right? And this is way back in the 70s and 80s. And they just called him the crazy Dr. Bernie. Sure enough, he would say, well, okay, you can call me crazy, but my patients have better outcomes. Now, this is the 70s. Now we're in, 2022. In just about any cancer center in the United States, any cancer treatment center, you're going to find meditation. You're going to probably find Reiki. You're going to find art therapy and different Tai Chi, different forms of Chinese modalities, because we know it helps. So the next big leap is going to be, for me, what I see is, okay, how do we take, because we have some people in the show that have had some miraculous healing. I mean, we're talking big, regrowing a liver, a woman that could barely walk, now walking again, right? So that's pretty mind-blowing stuff. What I hope to see from this series and the work is like, okay, how do we make that less of an anomaly? Because it is harder the numbers of people that regrow a liver are significantly less than those that reduce their blood pressure or other issues from just doing energy medicine.
Well, Betsy, you talked a bit about Reiki and, some of the pioneering work that was done to prove that Reiki works. So can you tell us a bit more about the studies that she did?
Yeah, well, gosh, there's been lots of studies. I mean, the Institute of Noetic Science has done hundreds of studies. Their studies, it's interesting because it's many studies are done outside of the United States because there's a lot of places, in the world where energy healing, not called energy healing, but has been done it's part of their culture, right? It's part of their culture and the way that they operate. Many towns still have medicine men and medicine women and herbalists and all that kind of stuff. It's part of who they are. So they're much more willing to look at these kinds of things. One of the, you know, and again, most of these studies haven't figured out the mechanism, like what exactly happened. But what they can say is that they see, for instance, they can measure the frequency of a body and see that it's out of disease or out of balance, right? They can measure, they do different things with measuring different frequencies of organ, the heart, the liver, the things like that. And then they do energy healing. And then they look at the frequency again and they can see that it's back to where it's supposed to be. So we know something is happening. A lot of people will ask, well, what's the right type of energy healing? So Reiki is sort of like, I call it the gateway drug. Everybody knows about Reiki. We've heard about Reiki. Reiki isn't that old, actually, but it, and Reiki uses symbols and all this kind of stuff to attune and help people get into the frequencies that they need to be. But really, any sort of frequency works. We do an entire episode on sound healing, for instance, right? And so there isn't a right or a wrong way to do energy healing. Energy is simply energy healing, when you work with a practitioner, typically is they have the ability to get into the right frequency for healing. And then what happens is typically our bodies want to resonate, right? They want to resonate. So when you're in the environment with somebody who is intentionally creating that frequency for you, and then your body wants to resonate with it, that's how the energy healing works. Now, energy healing can be done at a distance. Like you're in New York right now and I'm in LA, right? But we could actually do energy healing on each other, right? So how does that they don't really know. One of the things they think it is the earth has what's called the Schumann resonance, which is a frequency that they call it the Schumann resonance, the frequency of the earth. Interestingly enough, that is the same optimum frequency for the heart. So when you hear people say, are we really connected to the earth? We literally are, because we're supposed to be vibrating at the same frequency with the earth, right? So when an energy healer or a practitioner, let's say, gets into that frequency, they're connecting to the Schumann resonance, which means it's not just this small little space. It's you have to think bigger. You have to think non-locally and you have to think non-physical, because we happen to be linear people. So especially scientists, they want to know, well, how is that getting from here to there? Well, in reality, there is no here to there, right? We make up a here to there because that's how our brains work. That's how I can figure out where I am and what time it is and all those kinds of things. But what they think is that when you go into these deep states, there is no here or there. It all is. We're all connecting at the same frequency. And so that frequency then travels. Now, a good practitioner, we had this woman, her name is Virginia Grounds Griffith. I can't remember how her name goes, which order. She connects in and uses guides. So for instance, she uses like archangels and different guides that she is connected with. Some people use the Akashic records. Some people don't use any of those things. So, each individual practitioner is going to have their own way, but essentially they're really connecting into this higher, and higher is not even the right word, this sort of collective, bigger consciousness where everything is. And that's where the healing occurs, so to speak. Now, there's no measurement tools to measure any of this, which is why nobody can figure it out. Science hasn't, I interviewed a scientist many years ago, and he said, the reason we haven't figured this out is because we don't have the tools to measure this yet. We're getting closer to measuring smaller and smaller and smaller and different frequencies, but we just haven't caught up with it yet. We haven't caught up with the ancients yet. The ancients knew this forever, right? They've always known it. They have stories about it. They have beautiful, beautiful chants and poems saying the same thing, but we'll get there.
Right. It's kind of funny while you were talking about that, I was thinking, we have electricity, we have radio waves, microwaves, things that are invisible, but everybody takes those for granted and accepts that they're there. And there's no great skepticism. Oh, this can't work.
Right. Well,
Works.
and if I'm not mistaken, I don't think they know how electricity really travels either. They just know that it does. It's like when you turn the light switch on, it works. And when you turn it off, it doesn't work. It's the
Well,
same thing.
I know it's funny that way. Were there any energy healings that you uncovered that surprised you?
The girl that grew the liver, I loved her because she gave a piece of information that I thought was really important, besides really helping people understand that part of this myth in the new age, new thought movement is that you have to be happy all the time, and you have to watch out for the negative thoughts because those will make you sick. And there's all this stuff that goes on, right? And that for her, she was basically told she had 6 months to get a new liver or she was dead, right? And we have all of her medical records, and she was draining literally once a week, like 20 liters of fluid from her lungs once a week. I mean, it was horrifying and sad, right? And one of the things that she said that was so interesting to me was she was told, okay, you have to wait 5 months to get your liver. And there's really nothing medically they can do except put the needle in her and drain her lungs once a week so she could continue to breathe. So she was doing that, and she decided at that moment, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do these sessions every single day. And what she understood was that the liver is a 3D object, and it needs time to regenerate. It's not just magic. She had to regenerate it. So she took that 5 months, and every day, even when she woke up in fear and doubt, and even when she didn't know that it was going to work, she said, I'm doing this anyway. I'm doing it. And she did the visualization and she did the energy work. And what she understood was that she went in for a pre-op test about a month before she was supposed to get her new liver. And they said, I don't know what you've done, but your liver is almost back to normal again. And I think that was such a powerful understanding of how this sort of like physical versus non-physical realities work. We tend to think that, like, snap your fingers, if I'm a master meditator, I can pop a Mercedes out of my ass, right? But that's not necessarily how it works. She regenerated. And if a perfect example is that, when you cut your finger and then there's a scratch and or cut, and then a few days later it's sealed and then it's a little red, and then maybe a few weeks later there's nothing. It took time, in 3D time. And I thought that was really interesting. And it reminded me of a story. I know I'm yammering, but it reminded me of a story of a little boy, went way back in the Bleep days when I was making the Bleep, where there was a video of a little boy who had a brain tumor. And he decided to visualize every day. He loves Star Wars, that he was going to go in and be the Star Wars and shoot at this tumor until it got smaller. And that was an amazing tool. And so that's something I hope people get. It's like this tool of visualization, the tool of dreaming is like, this isn't just, oh, I want to dream and love and I mean, all of that's great, but it's actually part of what we use to heal our body, part of the tools.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I also stress is that nothing is instantaneous. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh, you have one dream and then automatically things are different, or you think one thing and automatically it changes. You're right. It does take time and it takes effort and it takes commitment. But again, you show what happens when you put in the time and the effort and the commitment and the
Yeah.
belief
Yeah.
where the miracles happen.
Well, it's interesting that you said the word belief, because there's an interesting sort of debate. Many of the energy healers said that you, some of the energy healers said you don't need to believe in order for it to work. I am not a scientist or a doctor or a trained energy professional, by the way, but in my experience, I do believe that belief plays a factor. I really do. Like in the amount of people I've talked to, the amount of interviews I've done, the amount of research I've read, I tend to think that if you don't believe it's going to work, you're putting up an additional layer, an additional block
Yeah.
that I think is harder to get through personally. So I think belief is important. That doesn't mean you can't have doubt, right? It doesn't mean you can't wake up and go, oh my God, like the girl with the liver, is this going to work today? I don't know. What she did with it was she just said, look, I know I had this doubt, but I'm doing it anyway. I'm going to do it with 100% anyway. So, it, that's, did she truly believe it? I don't think she had a choice, but I do believe that your attitude affects how it works.
I agree with that, absolutely. Oh, I'll tell you, the one thing that makes a lot of people skeptical about energy healing is that it's kind of easy for people to call themselves energy healers, and result it's an easy way to scam people. So how do you tell a difference between the imposters and the real deals?
So that's a great question. And it's something we talk about a little bit in the series because it's important to me. Because there are a lot of people out there that are going to say they're energy healers. And the truth is, we're all energy healers. When you're a mother and you hug your baby, you're healing your baby. If you're a friend and you put your arm around somebody who's suffering or you hug them, that's energy healing, by the way. So everybody's an energy healer. But you know, the real deal is a couple of things. One, no energy healer will ever tell you they're going to heal you because they're not healers. A true energy healer will never make a promise. They also won't say things to you like stop seeing your doctor or stop taking your medication because they're not medical professionals. We had some of the best energy healers, trained energy healers in the world on our series, right? These people knew physiology, they knew chemistry, they knew biology. I mean, I was impressed. Like these people, it looked as if they'd gone to medical school. They knew bones and how things were supposed to work and the nerves and everything, right? They were well trained in the body and how it works and to understand, wow, you're having this trouble here. That might be connected to the liver. And here's why. They really understood it. So if you're talking to somebody and they don't have a basic understanding of like the human body, that's a sure sign that that's a problem. The other thing is that I tend to say, go to people that have been doing it for a very long time and have great references. Talk to the references. If they're new, that doesn't mean they're not good, but understand that they're new and go into it with that understanding. And the most important way you're going to know because some of the best energy healers in the world might not be the energy healer for you, right? So the most important tool that you have is your gut. And if it doesn't feel right, if you just have this moment of like, this isn't feeling good, then it's not good. Then don't do it. Find somebody else.
And there are other options out there also.
There are millions of options out there. Absolutely. Try to find somebody who's at least done some sort of professional training, but some people haven't. They've just been gifted with it and they're very good. That's why I always say references are very important.
Hey, well, we are just about out of time. So my final question is, how can people find out about you, your series, and your other work?
So they can go to betsychasse.net and they can find a link to the energy healing series and everything else that I'm up to.
Wonderful.
By the way, the series is free. You can watch it on YouTube for free. So it's totally free.
We've been speaking with writer, director, filmmaker Betsy Chasse. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. If so, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector Weisman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.